It was never too cold to swim in Hawaii, even in December, but the sudden dip took my breath away. I hung there for a moment, underwater, savoring the peace and quiet while I tried to get my bearings. It was dark from the clouds of smoke above, and there was a gauzy film in the water. I guessed it was fuel or oil from the ruptured Utah. The legs of sailors treaded water nearby. As I watched, bullets chooped around them, leaving diagonal air trails. One of the sailors in the path of the bullets stopped kicking and went still. And I realized being underwater wasn't as peaceful and quiet as I had thought. I came up quickly and swam to Stanley. The sharp smell of burning gasoline and metal filled my nose, and I struggled not to swallow the oily water. "Another beautiful day in paradise," Stanley said grimly. "Do you see Brooks anywhere?" I asked. Stanley shook his head. Neither of us had seen him since we'd gone over the rail. "He'd want us to get home," I said. Zeros droned overhead, and deep, quivering explosions echoed through the water, shaking me inside and out. We couldn't stay here for long. "Look," said Stanley. A motor launch, like the one we'd taken to the Utah earlier that morning, zoomed out of the fog and cut its engine in the middle of the stranded sailors. "A rescue party!" I was so relieved I wanted to cry. Stanley and I swam for the boat with the rest of the survivors, and the coxswain helped fish men out of the water with a boat hook. A sailor I recognized from the Utah pulled me and then Stanley up into the launch. "Where the devil did the Germans come from?" the sailor said, gasping for breath. "It's not the Germans, it's the Japanese," said Stanley. "I can't swim! I can't swim!" a sailor cried from the water, and our rescuer hurried to the other side of the launch to help him. A sailor who couldn't swim? I shook my head. I couldn't imagine knowing I was going to serve on a ship and not learn how to swim first. A bee flew past my ear, and then another, and I swatted at the air. How were there bees out here? On a boat in the middle of a battle? A sailor fell on me, and Stanley pressed us into the floor of the boat, and tracer fire zipped into the wood where we'd been sitting. It wasn't bees. I realized in a panic it was bullets, flying so close I could hear them go by. "We have to get out of here," I yelled. "Where to?" yelled the coxswain. Our launch was full, and another boat had arrived and was pulling more Utahs from the water. "Let's get these kids somewhere safe," said the sailor, who'd helped us on board, gesturing to me and Stanley. "We'll drop them off on board," the coxswain said, and I felt a rush of relief. Home at last. "Wait! There are sailors still trapped in the Utah," Stanley cried. "Oh, he's right," I said. "We heard them tapping." The coxswain killed the engine, and the downtrodden Utahs suddenly came to life. "Where? When?" They all wanted to know. Stanley and I did our best to explain. "But that's behind a couple inches of steel plates," one of the sailors said. "How do we get them out of there?" "If the Human Torch was here, he could just point a finger at it and slice right through the steel with a stream of flame," Stanley said. I cringed at Stanley bringing up a comic book character at a time like this. But his words seemed to strike a chord with a sailor who was wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit. "The kid's onto something," he said. "We could run to the Raleigh, grab an acetylene torch, come back, and cut him out." I could see the neighboring Raleigh through the smoke. The cruiser was still afloat, but she had clearly taken a hit from a torpedo and was listing mightily. I couldn't believe these sailors were planning to climb on board another capsizing boat, even just to pick up welding equipment. But the mechanic's suggestion was followed by shouts of agreement. "I'll take these kids to Ford first," the coxswain said, nodding at me and Stanley. "There's no time," I said, my heart racing as I imagined again that I was trapped inside the Utah with the water rising. I couldn't let those men die like that. Not because their crewmates took extra time getting Stanley and me home. "We'll swim for it," I said. Stanley looked at me with wide-eyed disbelief, and I blinked, startled by my own words. Had I really just suggested that we climb back into the water with all those Japanese Zeros still shooting at us? I opened my mouth to take back what I'd said, but Stanley was already nodding. "It's not far," he said. "We'll be all right. Go, go," he told the sailors. Before the Utahs could object, Stanley was climbing back into the water, and Hawkman helped me. I followed him. The coxswain restarted the engine, and the sailors saluted us as they tore away for the Raleigh. "Off they go, meddlesome mariners all, to harness the power of Prometheus and save their confined companions," Stanley cried, and I smiled. For a brief moment, I felt good. Better than good. Somebody was going to rescue those sailors trapped in the Utah, and it was all because of Stanley and me. Now we just had to swim all by ourselves across open water, dodging bullets and bombs and burning fuel and... Oh no, Frank, look, Stanley said. The quiet urgency of his voice made me expect something awful as I turned. A shark, maybe, or a giant eel. Everyone forgets about the giant eels. But it was worse than that. Worse than anything else. Floating nearby in the water, face down and lifeless, was a sailor dressed in the white uniform of the Utah's baseball team.